In the October 2013 General Conference, President Dieter F. Uchtdorf made the following statement.
At a time where many churches throughout the world are experiencing significant decreases in numbers, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is one of the fastest growing churches in the world. And you heard President Monson today, more than 15 million now.
Implicit in President Uchtdorf's statement is a direct relationship between the growth rate of the church and its status as the only true church of Jesus Christ. He made this relationship explicit in his very next statement.
There are many reasons for this, but may I offer just a few. First, this church was restored in our day by Jesus Christ himself.
This is a significant claim by President Uchtdorf, that the rate of the growth of a church is a measure of its truthfulness. Yet, President Uchtdorf admitted that the church is not the fastest growing church, but only one of the fastest growing churches. The corollary to this numerical logic is that the total membership of a church is also a measure of its truthfulness. Though President Uchtdorf did not mention this explicitly, it is a natural outcome of his logic. This is why he emphasized the 15 million member milestone. Though the text of this conference talk has been altered to downplay his claims, he said what he said, and the numerical logic still holds. The church claims in its newsroom that it is the second fastest growing church in the United States. The church cites the National Council of Churches as the source for this claim. It does not clarify which church is the fastest growing. Immediately following the growth rate claim, the church makes a disclaimer, stating that the church cautions against overemphasis on growth statistics and denies making comparisons with other Christian denominations. But how can this be, when the church publicly posts its growth rate in comparison to other churches, and when a member of the First Presidency does the same in General Conference? The most recent issue of the Yearbook of American and Canadian Churches, published by the National Council of Churches, does corroborate that the church placed second in growth rate by percentage. The top three fastest growing churches were the Assemblies of God, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and the Seventh-day Adventists. But this begs another question. The growth rate for the Assemblies of God was more than twice that of the LDS Church. Using President Uchtdorf's numerical measure of truthfulness, that would make the Assemblies of God the true Church of Jesus Christ, or at least the truest Church of Jesus Christ. In terms of total membership, the Roman Catholic Church is by far the largest Christian denomination with over 1 billion members. From this perspective, the Pope can theoretically make the claim that his church is the true Church of Jesus Christ. Certainly, it claims to be the universal church, which is what Catholic Church means. So which church is the true Church of Jesus Christ? Is it the Assemblies of God, which is growing more than twice as fast as the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? Is it the Roman Catholic Church, which has almost 100 times the membership of the LDS Church? Or is it the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, simply because President Uchtdorf claims that its relatively rapid rate of growth is due in part to the fact that Jesus Christ himself restored it? The basic building block for determining the total membership of a church or its growth rate is a member. A member of a church can be defined in a variety of ways. Depending upon who is doing the counting, a member can be determined by membership records, claims of affiliation, attendance, and so forth. The fact that membership is determined in a variety of ways must be considered when assessing claims of relative growth rates. At every April General Conference, the First Presidency releases its statistical report for the year. In the April 2013 session of conference, Brooke P. Hales, Secretary to the First Presidency, presented the report.
For the information of the members of the Church, the First Presidency has issued the following statistical report regarding the growth and status of the Church as of December 31st, 2012. Total membership of the Church was 14,782,473. The number of new children of record added during 2012 was 122,273, with 272,330 converts baptized during 2012.
Brother Hale states that the intent of the report is to inform the members about the growth and status of the Church. This follows President Uchtdorf's numerical measure of truthfulness, where growth and status are somehow correlated. Every statistic given is done so as to give the picture of a growing and healthy church. Yet Brother Hales does not give any indication of how the total membership figure was obtained. Certainly, newly baptized converts are included, but by including children of record, the First Presidency indicates that it likely counts them in the overall membership number as well. Of course, including unbaptized children, technically non-members, would inflate the total membership count of the Church. For the 2012 statistical report, this means that the total church membership would be artificially inflated by over 120,000 members. The Church has publicly stated what goes into the counting of members, if not reluctantly. A public relations spokesman for the Church, Scott Trotter, gave the following explanation to the Salt Lake Tribune in May 2012. In other words, children of record, though not technically members, are considered members of the Church for statistical purposes. While this method of reporting members pads the overall total, it doesn't affect the growth rate. Unless, of course, the Church hasn't consistently followed its reporting procedures. Unfortunately, the Church has had to reluctantly admit that it did significantly change its membership reporting guidelines in the last 10 years. When confronted with a reporting difference between what the Church supplied for the U.S. Religion Census in 2000 and for its own Deseret News Church Almanac of the same year, a difference of almost 1 million members, Brother Trotter acknowledged the discrepancy. He explained that in 2000, the Church did not include the so-called lost sheep, but changed the reporting protocol to include these members. As might be expected, the change in reporting between 2000 and 2010 significantly affected the calculation for the growth rate of the Church during the decade in question. Instead of the 45% growth rate reported by the census, the growth rate should have been under 20% for the decade given consistent membership reporting by the Church. Perhaps the most troubling aspect of the membership reporting blunder is that the Church never notified those conducting the census, or anyone else for that matter, of the change in membership reporting. The change was only acknowledged when the discrepancy became public. Nor was an apology forthcoming for skewing the census figures. As we noted in our last episode, the Church counts as members both those who have been baptized into the Church and children of record. The sum of these two numbers constitute the total membership of the Church, which at the time of President Uchtdorf's talk was 15 million. President Uchtdorf placed great emphasis on that numerical milestone.
And you heard President Monson today. More than 15 million now.
It is as if President Uchtdorf is boasting of a vast array of members poised to conquer the world. Yet, we have already noted that the membership of the Church is a drop in the bucket when compared to the Catholic Church, let alone the population of the world. Still, 15 million members seems to be an impressive number if it is a true representation of the membership of the Church. What is the reality behind this number? Is it a valid indicator of the numerical strength of the Church? Or is the number inflated to support the narrative of a healthy Church, the true Church of Jesus Christ? The Church has openly stated that it counts children of record as part of its membership. But children of record, those children that have been blessed, are not members. They should not be counted. To get an accurate membership count, we will subtract the increase in children of record for the past 7 statistical reports. This will give us the total of all children of record under the age of 8 within the Church, or at least our best estimate. When these children of record are subtracted, the total membership of the Church now stands at approximately 14,200,000. We learned in our last episode that according to Scott Trotter, a public spokesperson for the Church, there was a category of members that were not currently associated with a specific congregation. This is a euphemism for members that are so totally lost to the Church that it has no idea where they are. While it is true that these lost sheep are still members in the technical sense, they can hardly be considered members in the sense that President Uchtdorf used them in support of his numerical measure of truthfulness. How can members who no longer identify themselves with the Church be used as a testimony for the truthfulness of the Church? Furthermore, the Lord has commanded the Church to cast out every member who has not followed His law. Certainly, those who are no longer part of any church congregation cannot claim to follow the Lord's law or be considered His disciples. For the Church to disobey the Lord by not casting them out, while claiming them in their total membership number, is, among other things, just another way of padding statistics to meet the narrative of a strong and growing Church. Since these lost sheep cannot constitute members in any real sense of the word, and since the Lord has commanded the Church that these members be cast out, and since these members can in no way justify President Uchtdorf's claim, we will cast them out of the total membership count. At the time in question, when Brother Trotter made his admission, those members not affiliated with a specific congregation numbered almost 985,000. Subtracting this number from the previous total, we now have a more accurate number for the membership of the church. Bear in mind that the 985,000 count of these lost sheep was in 2000. The number today is likely far higher. The adjusted number of true members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is closer to 13 million than 15 million. This might not seem significant, but the differential is almost 9% of the total. Of course, 13 million is not an inconsequential number, but it is a significant number only if all 13 million are active members of the church. A large percentage of inactive members, like the lost sheep, would undermine President Uchtdorf's numerical measure of truthfulness. In our last video in this series, we concluded that there were approximately 13 million true members of the church and not the 15 million as claimed. For President Uchtdorf's numerical measure of truthfulness to carry its full weight, these 13 million members, or at least a high percentage of them, must be active, full-fledged members. The church collects data on church attendance and activity status, but does not make the data publicly available. Therefore, it is difficult to ascertain what the true status of activity is in the church. That the church doesn't release this type of information is telling. The church trumpets its gross membership numbers and growth rates, but withholds activity rates. It likely does so since the totals and growth rates support its narrative of a growing, vibrant church, while the activity rates do not. This point is continually emphasized by the visual images put out by the church, where congregations, local and general, are brimming with members. Its article on the growth of the church, for example, shows a packed General Conference Center. There are several methods to assess overall activity in the church, including the ratio of membership to congregations, seminary and institute enrollment, census data, temple construction, among others. We will use the ratio of membership to congregations and census data as an illustration. The church publishes membership totals and the number of congregations in its yearly statistical report at General Conference. Dividing the total membership by the total number of congregations gives an average number of members per congregation. Specific country averages can then be compared with the worldwide average. A high member to congregation ratio suggests high inactivity rates. If activity rates are high, the more congregations are created and the ratio of members to congregations drops. The nations listed are those with the highest ratio of membership to congregation based upon 2010 data. The worldwide average for that year was 493 members per congregation. This means that the ratio in Chile was almost 2 times the worldwide average. This strongly suggests that the reason the average congregation in Chile was not being split into smaller units was due to inactivity as well as the inability of the church to find enough leadership to staff new wards and branches. These 5 countries are the worst-case scenarios. The United States, the nation with the largest total membership, as might be expected, was just below the worldwide average. Activity rates can be estimated from the member-to-congregation ratio. Using the same 2010 data, Cumorah.com estimated that the average ward or branch worldwide had 148 active members, or 30% of the average membership achieved by the ratio. The same 5 nations had among the lowest estimated activity rates in the church. The United States was 10% above the worldwide average. If we apply the 30% estimated activity rate to the 15 million total members of the church, that would mean that there are approximately 4.5 million active members. Country census data can be used to indicate activity in the church as well. Many countries collect religious self-affiliation data where individuals identify themselves with a particular religion. The number of citizens of a particular country who identify themselves with a church can then be compared with the church's own membership numbers for that country. It would be expected that active members would self-identify with the church, while inactives might not. The table compares the religious self-identification census numbers with membership totals provided by the church. The percentage provides a good indication of the active membership. We can't do this for all countries where there are members of the church, since census data is not always available. Bear in mind that the percentages may be inflated, since many members often affiliate themselves with the church but do not attend on a regular basis. The census numbers appear to be consistent with the numbers estimated from the member-congregation ratio. It appears that, no matter how activity is estimated, church activity rates are well below 40% worldwide. Even at a generous 40% activity rate, there are only 6 million active members. If the 30% activity rate is accurate, then there are only 4.5 million members. But these numbers do not paint the entire picture of what constitutes an active member. It is doubtful that all of these 4.5 to 6 million members are full tithe payers or temple recommend holders. If these criteria were factored in, there would be considerably fewer truly active members of the church. This new total could hardly support President Uchtdorf's numerical measure of truthfulness. Implied in Elder Uchtdorf's statement is that the church will continue to demonstrate a high rate of growth into the distant future. The narrative that the church will continue to grow until it fills the whole earth is not President Uchtdorf's, but has been with us since the beginnings of this dispensation. The church also cites Daniel's famous stone which is cut out of the mountain prophecy to support the rapidly and unstoppable growing church narrative. President Gordon B. Hinckley used this prophecy in the October 2007 General Conference in the context of the growth of the church.
The church has become one large family scattered across the earth. There are now more than 13 million of us in 176 nations and territories. A marvelous and wonderful thing is coming to pass. The Lord is fulfilling His promise that His gospel shall be as the stone cut out of the mountain without hands, which would roll forth and fill the whole earth, as Daniel saw in vision. A great miracle is taking place right before our eyes.
Unfortunately, the church misinterprets both Joseph's statement and Daniel's prophecy to support its rapid growth rate scenario. Neither Joseph nor Daniel had the rapid growth of the church in mind when speaking of the kingdom of God filling the earth, but this is a topic for another day. Putting Daniel and Joseph aside, is there good reason to believe that the rapid growth rate of the church will continue unabated into the future? Since President Uchtdorf introduced his numerical measure of truthfulness, statistics, as the basis for his claim, we will do the same. The church often presents its narrative with graphs that show its growth from 1830, when it was organized, to the present day. These types of graphs invariably show a dramatic rise in the numbers, starting with the original 6 members and ending in the millions. These graphs, though supporting the narrative, do not give a true picture of what is happening today. They cannot help support any realistic projection of what growth will be in the future. Only recent trends can offer a basis for predicting the future growth of the church. We will use 2 methods of trend analysis based on the data provided by the church in its yearly statistical reports: membership growth and the growth of congregations. President Uchtdorf used total membership growth in defining his numerical measure of truthfulness. He correctly stated that the church was growing and that it had reached a historic number of total members. But what are the growth trends recently? Using the yearly statistical report beginning in 1970 and ending in 2012, one researcher found that since 1990, the annual growth rate has been continually falling. In 1990, the growth rate was over 6%. For the 20 years before that, the growth rate was generally 4 to 5%. For the last decade or so, the growth rate has been only 2.5%. The church is growing, but the rate has considerably slowed. The current growth rate of the church does exceed the growth rate of the world population. If continued, this will eventually ensure that everyone in the world will be a Mormon. Unfortunately, this will take thousands of years, and the earth will be seriously overpopulated before this occurs. Another measure of growth is the increase in the number of congregations, meaning wards and branches. This method is more accurate than the membership growth rate, which only provides insight into the total number of baptized members and children of record. Congregational growth factors in sacrament meeting attendance, active priesthood holders, and other requirements which are needed to organize additional wards and branches. According to averages provided by Cumorah.com, congregational growth has clearly slowed in the last decade, which matches the slowdown in overall membership growth. In fact, congregational growth is slower than membership growth, which can only mean that member inactivity is rising. Many conclusions can be drawn from these trends. We will highlight 2. First, the church is growing, though it is growing quickly only in comparison to other Christian churches. Second, in the last more than a decade, growth rates are slowing and inactivity is rising. If these trends continue, then a projection would eventually show the church slowing to a near zero membership growth rate, and, with increased inactivity, a negative congregational growth rate. In fact, the state of California has had a negative congregational growth rate since 2004. Could this be an initial look into the future of the church? In our previous episode, we pointed out that the growth rate of the church was slowing and that the rate of inactivity was increasing. In truth, the situation in the church is much more alarming. In 2011, during a religious studies class at Utah State University in Logan, Elder Marlon K. Jensen, the church historian at the time, was asked if the leaders of the church knew that members of the church were leaving in droves. His response was quite candid. The 15 men Elder Jensen referred to, of course, were the First Presidency and the Quorum of 12 Apostles. By all indications, Elder Jensen's claim that the church leaders know that people are leaving in droves is correct. After all, President Uchtdorf, in the same conference address where he boasted of the church's rapid growth, said the following:
To those who have separated themselves from the church, I say, my dear friends, there's yet a place for you here.
Implied in this statement, and others made by President Uchtdorf in his address, is that there is a large number of members who have separated themselves or left the church. Otherwise, President Uchtdorf would not have addressed it in such an important forum as General Conference. The brethren fear the situation is so serious that President Monson has launched a program to staunch its losses. The campaign is called To the Rescue. Yet, all this talk about numbers, whether it be the rapid growth rate of the church, the total membership, or the inactivity rate, misses the mark. Hasn't the Lord repeatedly pointed out that the number of true disciples will always be small? In his parable of the marriage of the king's son, which he likened to the kingdom of heaven, the Lord told of a concerted effort by a king to find those who would attend the wedding of his son. But in the end, the Lord concluded that few would be chosen. In other words, any number of missionaries may be sent to declare the gospel, but the end result will be that few are chosen. The Lord expressed the same principle in another parable. To envision a church that grows to fill the whole earth, believing it to be a fulfillment of prophecy, ignores specific prophecies about the modern church. Jacob, quoting the prophet Zenos and his parable of the vineyard, described the state of the modern church, when the Lord of the vineyard sent his servants to labor the last time before he burned it with fire. Nephi was shown in vision the time of the Gentiles in the last days, where there would be two churches, the great and abominable church founded by the devil and the church of the Lamb of God. Nephi described what he saw. Later, Nephi prophesied of the corruption of the modern church, and that because of this corruption, all would go astray, save it be a few who are the humble followers of Christ. Even these humble followers of Christ, according to Nephi, would err in many instances. The ancient prophecies concerning the church in the latter days are unanimous. We should expect a small church in our dispensation and very few humble followers of Jesus Christ.